Imagine you're an ancient Greek farmer just, maybe a few thousand years ago, and you're digging a new well on your land in Sicily.
All right, tough work.
Yeah, exactly. The ground is tough, it's packed with rocks, and suddenly your shovel hits something solid. You scrape away the dirt expecting a boulder, but you pull up bone.
Oh, wow.
It's a massive skull, like far larger than any human's. And right in the dead center of its forehead is a single gaping hole.
That would be terrifying.
Right. Looking at that, you'd probably think you just uncovered the remains of a monster. A literal giant with one eye.
Naturally. I mean, what else would you think?
But the reality of what you found and what the Cyclops actually represents is so much weirder than just a monster hiding in the dirt. Welcome to today's deep dive, where we're digging into the incredible stack of sources you provided about the origins of the Cyclops.
And I have to say, the sources you brought to us today, they completely shatter that monolithic pop culture image we all have.
Oh, totally. The lumbering, dim-witted brute in a cave waiting to be outsmarted.
Exactly. When we actually look at the ancient texts, we are forced to ask a much more profound question. Why does a culture invent the specific monsters it does?
Well, the word itself gives us our first major clue, I think. Cyclops literally translates from the ancient Greek words kuklos and ops, meaning circle eyes or round eyes.
Right, which seems basic on the surface, but the scholar Edelbert Kuhn proposed a translation that honestly changes the context entirely.
I love this part.
Yeah, he pointed out that kuklos can also mean wheel, specifically connecting it to the wheel of the sun.
Which is such a massive distinction. It completely alters the imagery for me.
How so?
Well, if you just say round eyes, I mean, all human eyes are technically round. That doesn't necessarily dictate a single eye.
Good point.
But a glowing sun wheel. The sun is solitary, it's distinct, it's singular, and it radiates this intense heat and power.
Precisely. It immediately frames the Cyclops not as some biological freak of nature, but as a being possessing intense, concentrated, almost elemental power.
And to really grasp that elemental power, we have to kind of throw out the image of the cave-dwelling shepherd for a minute.
We really do.
We need to go back to the very beginning of the cosmos. Because in the earliest written source in this stack, which is Hesiod's Theogony, composed around 700 BC, the Cyclops weren't monsters at all.
No, not at all. They were divine beings.
Yeah, an elite trio of brothers, Brontes, Steropes, and Arges.
And their names are highly significant, They translate to thunder, lightning, and bright.
Wow.
Yeah, they are the immortal sons of Uranus, who represents the sky, and Gaia, the earth.
So they're essentially brothers to the mighty Titans.
Exactly.
When I was reading Hesiod's description, it struck me that they are effectively the Q branch of Greek mythology, or like the Tony Starks of the ancient world.
That is a great way to put it.
Right. But they aren't just putting together armor in a workshop. They are harnessing raw elemental chaos and forging it into divine technology. Hesiod literally writes that strength and force and contrivances were in their works.
They are the primordial craftsmen. They represent that crucial moment when raw, destructive natural forces are finally organized into precise world-ordering tools.
But, okay, the timeline of their story in the mythology has a massive contradiction that I really want to push back on.
Okay, let's hear it.
If these three brothers are so divine, so powerful, and they are literally the children of the sky and the earth, why does Uranus immediately lock them away underground in Tartarus the second they are born?
Well, you have to look at how the Greeks viewed the concept of untamed power. Uranus was terrified of them.
Just purely out of fear.
Yeah, and you have to remember, Tartarus isn't just a basement. It is a cosmic abyss. It's a prison of torment situated as far beneath the Greek underworld as the earth is beneath the heavens.
Oh, wow.
Uranus locked them in this void because he feared their fearsome nature. They were just too powerful to be controlled.
But locking them away is exactly what sets up the ultimate cosmic rebellion, right?
Exactly. Uranus is overthrown by his son, the Titan Cronus.
But Cronus decides to leave the Cyclops locked in the abyss anyway. It isn't until Zeus comes along to challenge the Titans that the Cyclops finally get their moment in the sun.
Right, because Zeus realizes he can't win a cosmic war with bare hands. So he frees the brothers from Tartarus.
And they repay that debt by literally tipping the scales of the universe. I mean, the mythographer Apollodorus details exactly what they forged, and it's mind-blowing.
It really is the ultimate divine arsenal.
Yeah. They create Zeus's thunderbolt, allowing him to wield the sky itself as a weapon. They forge Poseidon's trident, giving him mastery over the seas and earthquakes.
And don't forget Hades. They craft his cap of invisibility.
Without the Cyclops, the Olympian gods lose that war. Period. The Cyclops are the architects of the universe's power structure as the Greeks understood it,
They absolutely are.
which makes their ultimate fate in the mythology so baffling to me. I mean, later sources like Euripides in his play Alcestis reveal that the god Apollo slaughters the Cyclops.
Or, depending on the translation, slaughters their sons.
Oh, yeah, Apollo goes after the blacksmiths.
He does.
But Zeus is the one who used the thunderbolt to kill Apollo's son, Asclepius. Why wouldn't Apollo just attack Zeus directly?
Well, because in the hierarchy of the Greek pantheon, you don't attack the king of the gods directly unless you want to end up chained in Tartarus yourself.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
So you attack his supply chain. Apollo took his grief and his rage out on the armorers who made the weapon.
That is so dark.
It's a remarkably dark sociological observation embedded right there in the myth. The creators of devastating technology often bear the brunt of the devastation those weapons cause, even if they aren't the ones pulling the trigger.
That is a staggering way to view them. But okay, just as Hesiod is establishing this noble, tragic, essential role for the cosmic smiths, we get a total narrative whiplash from another poet writing around the exact same time.
Oh, you mean Homer?
Yes. Homer drops the Odyssey and introduces the most famous Cyclops of all time, Polyphemus.
And the contrast is completely jarring.
It really is. We just left divine, immortal weaponsmiths who armed the gods. Now, certainly, we are dealing with uncivilized, cage-dwelling shepherds who eat humans.
It's a completely different monster.
Yeah, and Homer explicitly points out that they don't know agriculture, they don't hold assemblies, they don't even know how to build ships. So I have to ask, were Homer and Hesiod just writing for totally different audiences, or did the ancient Greeks just accept two completely contradictory realities at the same time?
They actually accepted both, because the monsters were meant to symbolize entirely different anxieties for them.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Sure. Hesiod's Cyclops belong to the deep past, right? The creation of the cosmos. Homer's Cyclops, on the other hand, represent the world of men.
Or the edges of it, anyway.
Exactly. Specifically, the terrifying, uncharted fringes of the Mediterranean world that Greek sailors were just beginning to explore. To Homer, the Cyclops symbolize the absolute antithesis of Greek civilization.
Because to a Greek, being civilized wasn't just about living in a city. It was about the institutions that govern you.
Precisely. Civilization was a fragile set of rules. Euripides later expands on Homer's description in a satyr play, and he notes that the Cyclops don't even have wine, so, quote, the land they dwell in knows no dancing.
It was no dancing. Wow. That is such a profound way to describe a society utterly devoid of culture and community.
It's beautiful, in a bleak sort of way.
But the real horror of Polyphemus isn't just that he lacks agriculture or wine. It's his complete rejection of Xenia, right?
The sacred concept of guest friendship, yes, absolutely central to Greek culture.
Right, because in the ancient Mediterranean, travel was incredibly dangerous. There were no hotels. You relied entirely on the hospitality of strangers to survive.
And the rule was that you always welcomed a stranger. You fed them, gave them shelter.
Because that stranger might secretly be a god in disguise testing your virtue.
Exactly.
So when Odysseus arrives and asks Polyphemus if he will honor the gods and show hospitality, Polyphemus' response is basically the ultimate horror for a Greek sailor.
It really is. In Euripides' adaptation, Polyphemus effectively says, most delicious is the flesh of strangers. Everyone who has come here has been slaughtered.
Just chilling.
They are people completely devoid of the cultural safety nets that keep society from descending into violence. They are the nightmare waiting just off the edge of the map.
But having these two conflicting versions of the Cyclops, the noble blacksmiths of the gods and the savage cannibalistic shepherds that must have driven later Greek and Roman writers crazy.
Oh, it did. The human urge to organize and categorize mythology is a powerful thing.
Because they eventually felt the need to execute a massive mythological retcon.
They did. Writers like Callimachus and the Roman poet Virgil essentially forced a crossover event to make the lore make geographical sense.
Yeah, they decided that both groups lived in the exact same place, Sicily or the nearby Aeolian Islands. And the mechanism they used to explain this is just brilliant.
It's very clever.
They rebranded the original three brothers, Hesiod's cosmic smiths, as the assistants to the smith god Hephaestus, or Vulcan in Roman myth. And they placed their workshops in the fiery subterranean forges deep underneath Mount Etna.
While the Homeric Cyclops, like Polyphemus and his kin, lived up on the surface of the island as shepherds.
It's just an incredibly clever piece of mythological duct tape.
That's exactly what it is. And it solves the narrative problem, but it also serves a practical, scientific purpose for the ancients.
How so?
Well, Homer used the Cyclops to explain the psychological terrors of the uncharted frontier, right? Virgil and others use them to explain violent geological phenomena.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
If you are a farmer in Sicily and you see smoke and fire spewing from Mount Etna and you feel the ground vibrating with these rhythmic seismic thuds, well, what is that?
It's the Cyclops, swinging their massive hammers at the anvil, forging new weapons for the gods.
Exactly. It provides a logical, systematic explanation for something entirely out of human control.
And the Greeks used that exact same mythological duct tape to explain physical impossibilities right in their own backyards. Which brings us to the third type of Cyclops in the sources you provided.
Yes. The ancient engineers.
The wall builders. This is perhaps the most fascinating and often overlooked category in the whole stack.
I completely agree.
Because if you visit the ruins of ancient cities like Mycenae and Tiryns today, you can still see these stupendous stone walls. The architecture is megalithic. The individual stones weigh tons.
They're massive.
They're so impossibly huge that the Greeks living during the classical period looked at these ruins from a lost older age and concluded that ordinary men couldn't possibly have lifted them.
Right. So they decided the Cyclops must have built them.
Exactly. They called them Cyclopean walls.
And these builder Cyclops essentially bridged the gap between the divine smiths and the savage shepherds. They possess supernatural strength and skill, much like Hesiod's craftsmen, but they are firmly rooted in the historical landscape of human cities.
And the sources provide this incredible historical detail about how society viewed them. The geographer Strabo and several other ancient writers had a very specific nickname for these builder Cyclops.
Oh, Gastrochairus.
Yes, which translates to belly hands.
It's a very strange, almost insulting moniker.
It is insulting. And unpacking why it's insulting gives us a massive window into ancient Greek sociology. Belly hands literally meant someone who fed themselves by the labor of their own hands. Their hands feed their belly.
Which reveals a profound class divide. You know, in ancient Greek society, the aristocratic, literate upper classes fundamentally looked down on manual labor.
Right.
To work with your hands for survival was considered base. It was even shameful.
Even if you are a magical giant building indestructible fortresses for kings,
Yeah.
it blows my mind. I mean, Pliny the Elder credits these specific Cyclops with inventing masonry towers and being the absolute first to work with bronze and iron.
They really were the harbingers of monumental architecture.
They built the defenses that allowed civilization to flourish.
Yet, because they engaged in backbreaking manual labor, they were marginalized in the mythic hierarchy. They weren't worshipped as gods, and they weren't celebrated as heroes.
They were basically the blue-collar workers of mythology.
Right.
Essential to the infrastructure, but completely excluded from the glory.
Exactly.
So we have the cosmic smiths arming the universe, the lawless shepherds terrorizing the edges of the map, and the marginalized engineers building the unexplainable megastructures. We understand what they represent sociologically.
We do.
But that still leaves the biggest physical question on the table. Where did the biological description of a giant with a single eye in the center of its forehead actually come from? Because somebody, at some point, had to imagine that highly specific face.
And this is where we cross the boundary from literary analysis into paleontology, or at least the attempt to use paleontology to reverse engineer myth.
And I find this theory incredibly convincing, I have to say. In the early 20th century, a paleontologist named Othniel Abel proposed the dwarf elephant hypothesis. Let's go back to that scenario I mentioned at the very beginning of this deep dive. During the Pleistocene era, Sicily was a lush environment teeming with wildlife, including a species of dwarf elephant called Paleoloxodon falconeri.
Which, crucially, is the exact island the later myths claim the Cyclops inhabited.
Exactly. The geography perfectly aligns. Now, if you look at the skull of one of these dwarf elephants, and you have no idea what an elephant is, it looks chillingly humanoid.
It really does.
But right in the center of the forehead, where the elephant's trunk would attach, there is a massive, gaping central nasal cavity. To an ancient Greek farmer pulling that skull out of the dirt, it doesn't look like a nose. It looks exactly like a giant single-eye socket.
It makes a lot of sense visually.
It makes perfect logical sense. You find a skull with a giant hole in the forehead, you invent a monster to explain it, boom, the myth is born.
It is a brilliantly seductive theory. It's clean, it's visually striking, and it provides a satisfying aha moment that connects the fossil record to human storytelling.
Yeah.
But modern scholarship has rigorously dismantled it.
Wait, really? How can you dismantle it? The physical resemblance is undeniable.
The resemblance exists, yes, but correlation does not equal causation. Experts like Aguirre, Buxton, Witten, and Hing have heavily criticized the elephant skull hypothesis because there is absolutely zero historical or literary evidence to support it.
None at all. Come on.
None. There are no ancient Greek texts, no diary entries, no passing references saying, hey, we found these giant skulls with a single hole in the head in Sicily.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is what paleontologists and folklore scholars call an unfalsifiable geomyth. In fact, Athenio Abel actually popularized his theory by claiming the ancient Greek philosopher Empedocles had identified elephant bones as Cyclops remains.
Well, wait, if a Greek philosopher wrote it down, doesn't that validate the theory?
It would, if it were true.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that claim has no basis in any surviving records. Abel seemingly fabricated it, or at least wildly embellished a local rumor, to give his hypothesis academic weight.
That is wild.
The paleontologist Mark Witten points out a critical flaw, too. Elephant fossils and myths of one-eyed monsters exist all over the globe, often in places where they never overlap. There is no demonstrable chain of evidence linking this specific Sicilian fossil to this specific Greek myth.
So it's really just an incredible coincidence.
It's a post hoc rationalization. We, as modern people, look at an elephant skull, see how it looks like a cyclops, and confidently assume the Greeks must have seen it exactly the same way, but we just can't prove they ever dug them up or cared about them if they did.
Okay, so if the dream of the elephant skull monster is dead, what is the alternative? How does a culture invent a single-eyed giant without a physical blueprint?
The alternative is arguably much more grounded in human behavior. The scholar Walter Burkert proposed that we should look back to the Cyclops' most consistent role across the myths.
Which is their identity as metalworkers.
Exactly. In the ancient Mediterranean, metallurgy wasn't just a trade. It was a highly specialized, almost magical skill that could dictate the survival of an entire city-state.
That makes sense. I mean, if you know how to smelt bronze or iron and forge stronger swords than the neighboring army, you treat that recipe like state secrets.
Oh, absolutely. Smith guilds groups like the Cabiri or the Telchines were notoriously secretive about their practices. They operated in extreme isolation, often on remote islands or deep in the mountains where they mined their ore.
Interesting.
Burkert argues that the myth of the Cyclops stems from the gradual mythologization of these actual human Smith guilds. Over centuries, stories of these powerful, isolated, secretive craftsmen were exaggerated until the men themselves became literal giants.
Okay, but how does a secretive metalworker turn into a creature with one eye? That's the biological leap I'm struggling with here.
Well, think about the physical mechanics of being a blacksmith in antiquity. You are staring into a blazing forge, swinging a hammer at glowing hot metal all day. Sparks and shards are constantly flying into the air.
Right, it's super dangerous.
What is a highly skilled craftsman going to do to protect their livelihood? They might wear an eye patch over one eye to preserve it from flying debris.
Oh my gosh.
Or they might keep one eye covered so it remains adapted to the dark, allowing them to quickly lift the patch and accurately judge the color and therefore the exact temperature of the glowing metal.
Oh, that is absolutely brilliant. It's like a massive game of historical telephone spanning hundreds of years.
Exactly.
A functional piece of protective gear, basically a blacksmith's safety goggle, gets passed down through generations of oral storytelling until it morphs into a biological mutation. The one eye was literally just a tool of the trade.
It completely grounds the myth in reality. The exclusive, misunderstood practices of human craftsmen become the terrifying biology of mythological monsters. It reminds us that mythology doesn't always come from misidentified fossils buried in the dirt.
Right, it comes from human sociology.
Yes, it comes from how we view the people we rely on but don't fully understand.
So, synthesizing everything we've unpacked from your sources today, I mean, we've gone on quite a journey.
We really have.
We started with the cosmic smiths, Brontes, Steropes, and Arges, who harnessed the chaos of the universe to arm the gods. Then we encountered the lawless shepherds, like Polyphemus, who terrified sailors by rejecting every civilized institution the Greeks held dear.
Right.
From there, we uncovered the blue-collar belly hands, the forgotten engineers who hauled the massive stones to build ancient Greece's greatest walls, only to suffer the snobbery of the very people who hid behind them.
The irony is palpable.
And finally, we navigated the debate between Pleistocene dwarf elephant skulls and the secret eye patches of ancient blacksmiths.
It is a remarkable evolution of a single concept. And looking at all of this together, I think there's a profound final thought we can extract for you to think about.
I'd love to hear it.
If we look closely at all three distinct types of Cyclops, they are always used as avatars for whatever the ancient Greeks found intimidating but fundamentally necessary.
They're the ultimate other.
They are. The Greeks needed the destructive, life-giving power of a thunderstorm, so they mythologized the towering smiths who made the lightning. They needed to navigate the alien, hostile ways of foreign lands to establish trade routes, so they mythologized the terrifying shepherds guarding the frontier.
And they relied entirely on the back-breaking manual labor required to build their fortresses, so they mythologized the belly hands.
Exactly. The Cyclops represents the systems and people that society depends on but deeply misunderstands and fears.
That raises such a powerful mirror to our own time. It really forces you to wonder, what complex, necessary systems are we currently mythologizing today?
It's a great question.
What technologies or invisible workforces do we rely on for our power and security, but are secretly terrified of because we don't understand how they actually work?
Do we have our own modern Cyclops?
That is a brilliant question to sit with. Are we still looking at the foundations of our world and just seeing a giant, dumb, one-eyed brute in a cave? Thank you so much for sharing these sources with us and for joining this deep dive. The next time you picture a Cyclops, we hope you see the lightning, the megalithic walls, and the incredibly complicated human history hiding right behind that single eye.